My name is Emily Scialom, obviously Hebrew for peace, as many of you will know. I was born in Hackney, just across the city, and grew up in the spiritual heartland of Glastonbury. Now, if anyone knows anything about Glastonbury, they'll know how weird and wonderful that place is, and I really was immersed in the culture there from a young age. I'm talking druids and wizards and witches, white witches obviously, and all kinds of characters who, money can't buy, and I feel I absorbed a lot of their ideas about life and put them into literature, so that is some of the inspiration behind the Religion of Self-Enlightenment. To tell you a little bit about my journey so far, I was a nationally published poet aged 8 and an internationally published poet aged 17 and 18. That was a result of entering competitions online and through my school. I then had a musical interlude where I turned my poetry into songs, and at Liverpool University I met people who were completely right to be in a band with, and I knew that. And I had a terrible neurotic breakdown about the potential for fame that I was experiencing at that time, and ran away screaming from that opportunity, and then had a nervous breakdown. But it's not all sad and doom and gloom, because essentially I learned a lot through those experiences, and I channeled my insights and my pain, if you like, into a book, which you will see before you. And essentially I started writing the Religion of Self-Enlightenment in 2008. I finished university in 2007, had a wonderful experience at Liverpool University, but once that was over I needed fresh landscapes to explore, and the origin of the Religion of Self-Enlightenment was from my experience working in a pub called the Granta in Cambridge. And I had a manager there who was incredibly dull and moany, and he was a lovely man in many ways, don't get me wrong. He was very functional, he had a young child to raise, and he had a pub to upkeep and keep up and all these kind of things, so I had a lot of respect for him, but he was on the more on the naggy side of things, let's say, and we clashed in our personalities. But he took me aside one day and told me a story which completely blew my mind, and he said when he was 17, and bear in mind this is a very functional person in a senior position, he said when he was 17 he used to listen to Pink Floyd on headphones and get a bit merry, let's say, and his eyes exploded like universes. And for me, I was like looking at this guy thinking, you were someone completely different in your youth, and what happened to that explorative, creative, kind of wild person that you once were? And I went home. I mean, the commute wasn't long because I live next door, but I went home and wrote the first line of my debut novel about that man, and the line was, he was the kind of person who has forgotten why he is here. Now, in writing this line, I had to figure out how he'd forgotten, what he'd forgotten, and how he goes about remembering. And that is really the genesis of the Religion of Self-Enlightenment, this experience of the Granta pub. The storyline of the novel which eventually emerged is a very ordinary, unassuming man who really doesn't believe in anything and doesn't like belief in any way, shape or form, and he thinks he's hurtling towards a pointless death. So when he greets death and has a near-death experience, it shakes him and surprises him ineffably, and he gradually unravels as a result of that experience. But at his lowest ebb, he writes a new religion and pieces together all the differing parts of his belief system that was emerging as a result of his near-death experience. He pieces it all together and makes a whole new belief system based on love and kindness and compassion, as all religions should be, in my opinion. My influences, I'm going to go through 3 influences because I have so much gratitude for these 3 authors. Raymond Moody is known as the father of the near-death experience. He released a book called Life After Life in 1975, which sold 20 million copies, and essentially he found that because of the advances in science and medicine, a lot more people had had experiences of the afterlife as a result of dying or nearly dying. And in the scientific community this was very frowned upon to explore these kind of things, and Raymond Moody said no, this is really important. And in these dusty warehouses he kind of like gathered together all this disparate information and kind of collated it all into a book called Life After Life, which, as I say, was a roaring success, and he became an exceptional figure in his field. The second writer I'm going to talk about is Dr. Brian Weiss. Now, Dr. Brian Weiss was a clinical psychologist who regressed people into their past lives and essentially made their present lives better as a result of exploring their, some might call it their subconscious, some might call it their spiritual experiences that they've been through in the past, but essentially in healing the past we can make our present experience of life better. And Brian Weiss has written several books in this vein, and all of them are worth exploring. Neil Donald Walsh wrote a series of books called Conversations with God. 3 books: Personal Truths, Global Truths, Universal Truths, and someone in this room, I won't embarrass them, gave me a copy of the first of this series of books, and it really blew me away in terms of talking about religion with kindness, with a kind of gentility that is quite rare. I mean, when people object to religion, it's often because there's a lot of fire and brimstone talk, or you're going to hell, or cruelty involved. However, Neil Donald Walsh talks about religion in such a warm, embracing way that you can't help but be seduced by it. So I really love his Conversations with God series, and I tried to write in a similar style because I felt, as a reader, very moved by it. Religion, you know, I've had everything from, I've got my book, it's the Bible, to religion, I don't do religion, you know, and the word religion itself is very contentious. However, my religion that I've written in fictional format is very gentle and talks merely of karma, which I know a lot of people in a spiritual bookshop will be well versed in the theories of, and essentially do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and love your neighbour as yourself, and this kind of thing. The golden rule is something I practice in my life, and I know it means a lot to a lot of people. So it explores ideas of karma, then reincarnation, because essentially I was one of those very weird and wacky and wonderful children who believe they've been here before, and as an adult I've explored these themes in my literature. So enlightenment is obviously a key word in the book, it's in the title, and there are many theories of enlightenment. For example, some people think that the process of reincarnation and enlightenment is a linear one, where you learn and grow and learn and grow and learn and grow, and then at some point you are your full spiritual self and you see everything clearly and you've developed enough to attain enlightenment. However, some people think that, and this is talking about Eastern religions primarily, so some people theorize that enlightenment is a state where you realise that you were and always were, you are and always were love itself, and this kind of thing. So it's very difficult to know what enlightenment is when you're in the midst of the process of reincarnating, so to speak. But essentially the book is very compassionate and screams the word love at the top of its voice, you know, or the main character screams the word love at the top of his voice. And this is the sense that I want to give to readers, that we need more of these kind of qualities, compassion, kindness, etc. in the world. So the reviews of the Religion of Self-Enlightenment have really blown me away. Some people call it life-changing. Some people have said, Shalom, Emily, this is a gift to the world. some people say, if you buy one book in your life, make it this one, which is quite audacious. And some people say it's very much like The Catcher in the Rye, which is my favourite novel, and they've had experiences where they lock themselves in a room for 3 days and just devour the book and come out a different kind of person, which is amazing to me because that's exactly what I did with my favourite book, The Catcher in the Rye. So it went through several editorial processes to reach its final incarnation, and I'd like to give thanks to those who were involved. A Cambridge University academic edited it twice. He's had his own book published with Cambridge University Press and also worked in the English faculty of Cambridge University, so he was very well versed in English literature and really helped a lot. My current editor is a man called William Hartston, who has a book available with Watkins Publishing, actually, and that comes out on May 9th, and it's about the history of humour, and he's also written 25 of his own books, so again, very well versed in English literature and English language. But the Religion of Self-Enlightenment itself is an 8-year labour of love, and I signed a publishing deal for it in 2015 with Olympia. It was an ill-fated publishing deal, looking back. However, I'd like to tell you a heartwarming story, and my first question to you, the audience, is has anyone heard of a band called the Libertines?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. So has anyone heard of Carl Barrett?
Yes.
Wonderful. So sometimes people know who Pete Doherty is, who is the notorious frontman of the Libertines, but there's another frontman of the Libertines who is equally as interesting and talented, in my opinion, and I bumped into him. I was out with a friend who's here, but again won't embarrass people, and I went to a pub and I was very drunk. I went out into the smoking area to have a cigarette, and I bumped into Carl Barrett. And I said, Carl, I was very bolshy and, audacious. And I said, Carl, I just signed a publishing deal. He said, that's nice, what's the book called? I said, it's called The Religion of Self-Enlightenment. He said, what's it about? And I said, it's about a very boring man who has a girlfriend he doesn't care about, a job he doesn't care about, and he thinks he's hurtling towards a pointless extinction, but then he dies in a car accident. So then someone tapped Carl on the shoulder and said, Carl, you need to DJ upstairs. And he made his excuses, wish me luck, and left. And most stories end there. And I think it's a really nice story because on the way home I did actually shed a few tears because I was overwhelmed with happiness. I just signed a publishing deal for my debut novel, and I'd met my hero who showed vague interest in what I was doing, so how could it have gone any better? But this story has a whole other level because 2 years later, in 2017, I was at Glastonbury Festival under the big oak tree there, and I'd written down the title of the book, The Religion of Self-Enlightenment, hundreds of times, and I was handing it out to people, and essentially 2 people had heard of it, which made my year, and I was walking backwards, and I bumped into someone. I said, I know you, and it was Carl Barrett, and without missing a beat, he said to me, so he died in a car accident. And I thought the chivalry, the charm was off the scale, and I managed to hold myself together and finish the story, and then he made his excuses. He had to go and see his missus, as he phrased it, and that journey was complete. But I'm glad you enjoyed that story as much as I enjoyed being part of it. I have lots of weird and wonderful aspects to my journey with this book, but the number one thing that I think is most important to share with you is a photograph which mirrors the front cover of my book in Paradise Nature Reserve, and whether you see this as a mirage or literal truth or anything in between, I think it's a fascinating photograph, and there are actually 40 photos, one for each of the people here today, in order to promote the book, and I've signed them all, so if anyone wants free things, feel free to see me afterwards. And I'd like to stop talking about myself for a minute, because not that I'm not interesting and fascinating, glorious and all those kind of things, but we live in a very troubled world, and this is a book which speaks of peace during times of war, and really the goal for the Religion of Self-Enlightenment is to help with our spiritual confusion and our religious trauma and our existential strife. And whether you're talking about Pakistan with the difficulties between, you know, Hindus and Muslims, or whether you're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or whether you're talking about the situation in Iran, a lot of the problems we face as a species are rooted in religious confusion, and this is a book which attempts to address that and also to heal it. And I think I've accomplished that mission, and the reviews that I'm getting are absolutely astonishing, and I hope that it will be a book that will be able to assist people on their own spiritual path. Religion of Self-Enlightenment was published on August 25th, 2016 and declared a cult sensation by the Cambridge News in 2018. Now, obviously at that point, you know, I was doing book signings and book talks all over the country and having a whirl of it, quite frankly. From Eastbourne to Aberdeen, I travelled the length and breadth of Britain in order to promote my books, and then the pandemic hit. Now that was a very troubling, difficult time, as I'm sure many in this room will have experienced alongside me. However, as a writer, again, it's not all doom and gloom, because I managed to produce 5 other books during that time, and I'd like to talk briefly about what each one of those books is about. So The Rivers was my second book. It's a romance novel, essentially. It was in the London Book Fair and the Libertines Festival of Books, and it has a lot of political rants, let's say, very left-leaning, and lots of philosophy and poetry. Next up comes 3 poetic offerings, so Eternal Artists, My Searches for Meaning, and Viajes Internos, which is Spanish for internal travels or internal voyages. And then my most recently published book is A Moment of Perfection, and that's about a young man called Elijah Keith who sails to the New World, as it was known then, in 1727, climbs a sacred mountain and has a dystopian vision of the future at its summit. So basically he sees all the war and strife that is about to happen to the world in the last few hundred years, and in a hellish vision it comes to him with clarity. It's very pro-Indigenous people, and again very compassionate about the struggles that we go through as individuals and as a species. I'm currently writing a novel called The Watch on the Beach, which is about a young woman called Clara who lives in Cambridge. She's 28 years old and she's very wayward. Her friends are very wayward, and together they explore life and try and deal with some of the problems that they're facing in their minds and in their lives and in their hearts and souls as well. And essentially that I will try to get a traditional publishing deal for that in the coming months. So here's a novel idea. If any of this sounds really interesting to you and you're in a position to help me, help me. So if you work for a publishing industry, or you work for a media outlet, or you have a novel idea, you know, which could really, you know, benefit what I'm trying to do, then please feel free to contact me. I'm very easy to find. I'm all over social media like a rash, and my website is has my email address. So yeah, and the last thing that I wanted to focus upon is a review. Now, I was supposed to perform here with a dear friend of mine called Helena, who essentially is a fellow poet. She has 2 books available called Passion and Radiance, and she couldn't be here for various reasons, but she recently sent me this review of The Religion of Self-Enlightenment, and it completely blew me away, so I would like to share this with you in its entirety, if I may. It was, by the way, we met in Watkins' books here, so it brings the whole thing beautifully full circle. So it was the heady late summer of 2022 when Emily's path collided spectacularly with my own at London's famous esoteric bookshop Watkins. I was lingering at the crystal counter, peering at a silver ring that had caught my eye, when I overheard her excited voice asking the shop manager if they had her debut novel The Religion of Self-Enlightenment in stock. After a quick check on the computer, he confirmed that they had 1 copy in stock. I turned to her, magnetised her effervescent, cheerful energy, and expressed that I'd very much like to buy this book of hers. What ensued was a joyous interaction that both of us will likely never forget. Well, back to the rose, as she affectionately refers to this most incredible work. In truth, it took me a while to get around to writing this review, as the book's main character, Carrick, and his story felt so alarmingly attuned to events that felt oddly familiar. So, it wasn't difficult to get swept along on his startling journey of realisation through terrible mental and emotional trauma, and to not only feel empathy for him, but feel deeply stirred by his moments of immense spiritual gnosis scattered as shining gems throughout this modern triumph of a book. A standout moment comes as Carrick contemplates the nature of beauty during an exchange with his psychiatrist and burgeoning apostle Dr. Turnstone. Carrick muses passionately on the potential for beauty and how we each have the opportunity to seize these moments throughout our lives, as if to say that true spiritual beauty is the gateway towards enlightenment should we choose to notice its omnipresence. This sentiment is echoed again at the book's closing, although the reader is invited to discover that beauty within the pages for themselves. In the meantime, I thank you, Emily, for the gift of this extraordinary work of writing. Not only have you gifted the reader with an opportunity to remember that we as souls are here to learn how to love, as Carrick puts it, but you yourself have without a doubt made the world a better place by following your inspiration and bringing this paradigm-changing story to humanity. I fervently hope that they take note. So, that concludes my talk, and thank you all for listening.
Just what was the experience of actually writing the book like? Could you talk about that?
I could talk about that because it was quite intense actually, and I spent at the time of writing I spent 6 months writing, like 12-hour days and this kind of thing, and then I took 6 months off and did something else. I worked and had social life and this kind of thing, but the 6 months I was writing, I was very much immersed in this story, and it completely took over my life. And that process probably lasted about 4 or 5 years or something like that, where I was on again, off again, writing this book. And like I say, in 6 month bursts of creativity and obsession, really. But yeah, that's generally, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, I had a question actually for you, which was, what sort of aspect do you think of the religion that you have created through the book? Do you think best mirrors some of the key principles in mainstream religions, and what would that be? And do you think that came from your knowledge of kind of organised religion, or did it come from somewhere else?
I've learned a lot about religion in my life, and it's really an obsession of mine to forward my understanding of spirituality. I think that's really, not why we're all here, but why I'm here, certainly. And I was actually going to read a passage from the religion, which I decided was too long and maybe would lose the focus of the talk. But it was called A New Idea of Truth. And the metaphor which is within those pages is that we are all walking on pathways of understanding. And say, for example, now I told you that it's raining outside, you would use this as a stone and walk upon your understanding, like, oh, I should probably, get my umbrella out or something like that. Like, we're all exchanging facts and information and then walking upon this pathway. And I comment on the nature of some of the paving stones that we're walking on. Like, are they sturdy or are they dangerous? For example, like, some of the paving stones that, or the beliefs that mainstream religions and even atheism kind of share can be very perilous, and for example, if you lie, you're going to hell. Some people will use that as a paving stone and walk upon it as if it was truth, but it may hurt them, So you've really got to concentrate on what information you filter through to your deepest heart and soul, and what information you question and query and keep far away from yourself, And this process of discernment is really important when talking about religion, because a lot of people are saying, come this way, come that way, believe this, believe that, and you've got to walk your own pathway and decide in the midst of that what's right for you. So in the religion I discuss these points and hopefully make sense of it all, so that, you know, other people can have more clarity about how to navigate the spiritual world and the spiritual belief systems that we have developed as a species.
Yeah, just quickly. So, through the book, I haven't read it yet, but
Thank you.
was it that you're trying to give people a road or an insight into the deeper aspects, like maybe the metaphysical aspects of religion, or do you think, I don't even know how to formulate this question, but was it that it sounds like you're coming from more like a universal consciousness perspective, like the shift between, again, I don't want to offend anyone, but the time of that religious period, you know, has come, and we're moving into this universal kind of awareness and consciousness. Is that like a thread, or was that something that inspired you to write this book with that?
Well, if I interpret your question correctly, then I thank you for it, because frankly, this idea that I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, and we are enemies because of that, it's very childish, you know. We're all here to understand life, we're all here to develop ourselves, and we're all here to find out the truth of life. And whether you take the mountains or the desert road, we're all going to the same destination. I feel that in my soul, you know. And in my book, I really tried to move past that kind of like closed-minded, kind of negative attitude towards religion and belief, that we are enemies even though we are one, you know. And in the belief system that I write, I focus a lot on unity, and it never says like you shouldn't believe this and you should believe that, or it never dictates to you. It says that your fingerprint is unique, your iris is unique, and so is your perception of life, and that's okay, you know. No one has the right to tell you what to believe and what to think and this kind of thing, and they might think they do, but they really don't. And that level of kindness and, dare I say it, that level of understanding needs to be promoted in the world, because otherwise we're going to devolve into warring factions who all think that they have the right answer, even though their answers are completely different, which makes no sense. So that's why people get tired of religion, and for me religion has been a source of solace and great strength, you know, to persevere in life. And I'd like to bring that side of religion, the kind side of religion, the loving side of religion and spirituality to the fore, and leave the rest behind. So thanks for your question, I really appreciate that. Thank you, namaste. Yeah. Yeah,
That's one. Like the one of the themes is how humans relate to nature, or not, as the case may be. In fact, that we've kind of broken our kind of our pure kind of relationship or behaviour in some way, and you know, trying to get back to that is you know, part of the sort of spiritual process. I mean, do you have any kind of thoughts or advice of how people who might feel a bit alienated or denatured might kind of achieve that, or kind of get back to something a little bit more?
That's interesting, but it suggests that you can be. Your question suggests that you can be separate from the natural world, which is exactly what I argue against in the book, because nature will always win. There is no doubt about it. We are not, as a human species, powerful enough to defeat nature, even if should we want to, you know. But there's no need for that battle between humanity and nature, because essentially we are natural beings, and if we understood that, then we would cherish nature as we cherish ourselves. So that's how I see things, and I hope to promote that message in my novel, you know, and make sure that, you know, we do see ourselves as part of the natural world, instead of like walking upon it and destroying it and, you know, disrespecting it and this kind of thing. I think our attitude needs to evolve to the point where we live in harmony with the world around us, and that's what my character discovers and tries to voice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have you read it out of curiosity?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm really pleased. Thank you. Fantastic.
I'm just going to say that there are so many authors who write about, you know, bringing people together, you know, and be more kind and compassionate, and I've read a lot of it, you know, and I was born Muslim, and I've kind of studied different kind of religion to try to understand the meaning of it, and I find my way. I have my own beliefs, you know, not the one of my parents, But the thing is, how your book can be so different from the others who try to convince people, not convince, but try to make them understand, you know. There is no, it shouldn't be a war between different kind of thinking or religion. So how your book can be something, bring something more positive about it. You know what I mean? It's just like, how we can be so different, because many people tried before you, and they managed to kind of, you know, not convince, but change the mind of people. Like me, I've changed my mind about it, you know. But how your book can be so different, how we can unpack, because I'm still seeing people being so violent and not compassionate. And like my mom always said, she's been through to the war, and she said, I've learned about it. I've been a victim of it, but I don't have any hate. But I don't understand why people keep doing war and why they keep doing that kind of things. You know?
For me, I don't understand a lot of human behaviour. I don't understand how we can see, you know, people with different skin colour as enemies or lower or better than us. I don't understand why women are degraded so horribly throughout the world and denied education just because of who they are. I don't understand why we go to war over religion or territory at this point in time, you know, and I can't begin to fathom what would make someone be violent in the name of beliefs, you know, because for me belief is a peaceful thing. And obviously you've been on your own journey of discovery. I'm not, like I say, I'm not here to dictate to you about your pathway or anything like that. But the compassion that I bring to the table is quite rare, because a lot of people, if they write about religion, they do think that they have the answers and they want to tell you all about them, and then you follow them and then you're a good person. But for me, I feel like the answers are in your heart and in your soul, and if I can empower you to follow your intuition and your inner guide, then that's my job, you know, not to tell you what to do, but to listen to your own inner voice, and that's really why I do it. So
Dalai Lama said, an open heart is an open mind.
yeah,
I think he said it a lot about it.
Beautiful. Well, you know, we're all here to learn, and we're all learning all the time. So if we keep an open heart and an open mind, that process will be much smoother.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah, high five. Okay. Oh, Tim, go for it.
Okay. I think there's a follow-on to yours, because I think there is something different about your book, and that is that it's got the research in it regarding near-death experiences, and I think that's one factor that makes it different from many other books.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you so much.